Welcome to the Risk Wheelhouse, the podcast where we navigate the ever-changing seas of risk management and technology. Join your hosts, Ori Wellington and Sam Jones, as they steer you through the latest trends, insights, and strategies shaping the future of integrated risk management. Ready to chart a course towards success? Hop aboard and let's set sail into today's deep dive.
Welcome to a deep dive, where we take a stack of sources and extract the knowledge you need to be well-informed, fast. Today, we're cracking open a fascinating piece from an article series called The Risk Ignored, specifically Part 1, Chapter 4, titled The Irony of Risk Intelligence by John A. Wheeler.
It's a really powerful look at something fundamental, how organizations deal with risk, or maybe more often how they don't.
Exactly. And our mission in this deep dive is pretty clear. We're going to trace the messy evolution of risk management technology.
Right. And try to understand why what many call risk intelligence is often, anything but.
And see what a really dramatic corporate collapse reveals about whether you can truly buy this capability, this risk intelligence, or if you absolutely have to, build it from the ground up.
Yeah, and the author gives us a great starting point, a story, a real-world example right at the beginning.
Okay, let's dive into that then. We're talking about a moment in time back in early 2007 at SunTrust.
SunTrust, yeah. A major player, especially after an acquisition that left it really heavily invested in mortgage banking, and the author was right there in the thick of it.
He was a senior executive, right?
Yeah.
Oversee internal audit, compliance, risk management, the whole shebang.
Exactly. And he sets the scene with a new CEO coming in, someone whose perspective on risk sounds almost backwards.
How so?
Well, instead of seeing risk as a discipline, something you manage carefully, this CEO apparently saw it as a throttle, something to push forward faster.
Right, okay, that's
an aggressive take.
Yeah.
And the strategic move that followed really showed this immediately. They set a big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHG.
A BHG, isn't that from Jim Collins? Built to last.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of ironic using that term here.
Deeply ironic, yeah. The goal itself, more than double the mortgage portfolio.
Double it.
Within 12 months. The idea was to compete head-on with Wall Street securitization giants.
Okay, that is audacious and incredibly risky, you'd think.
You'd think. And the way they went about hitting that goal was alarming. Underwriting controls, systematically dismantled. Or weakened anyway. And at the same time, incentives for the mortgage originators, the people writing the loans, they surged dramatically.
Oh, boy. So you weaken the guardrails and offer huge rewards for driving faster.
Precisely. You create an environment, as the author puts it, that's just ripe for aggressive lending, for cutting corners, for disaster, basically.
And the author, sitting in his role overseeing risk, he must have seen this coming.
He says he did. He foresaw the inevitable crash. I mean, the writing was on the wall, right? In bold letters, reckless policies, crazy incentives.
So what did he do? Did he try to stop it?
He confronted them, describes a very tense meeting. Him, the CEO, and the head of mortgage banking.
I bet that went over well.
There's this detail in the piece that just jumps out. The head of mortgage banking literally writhed in his seat with anger during the meeting.
Writhed. Wow. Just pure refusal to hear it.
Total denial. And the consequences for the author were, swift and predictable.
Let me guess. Sidelined.
Immediately excluded from key discussions, key meetings, strategy sessions, gone.
And physically?
Physically relocated, exiled essentially to an empty office somewhere else.
The message couldn't be clearer. They wanted him gone.
Absolutely. Hoping he'd just resign and disappear quietly.
But he didn't.
He held on. Stayed just long enough to vest his equity and severance package. Smart move.
So he walked away with capital in hand.
Right. Just literally months before the whole house of cards came crashing down in the global financial crisis. Everything he warned about happened.
And SunTrust. What happened there?
Devastating. But, entirely predictable given the path they took. As mortgage problems exploded, their stock price just plummeted.
And they ended up needing a bailout.
Yep. One of the largest recipients of federal TARP funds.
And those executives. The CEO, the mortgage head who was writhing.
They eventually faced federal investigations. Justice caught up.
Which led to
a nearly $1 billion settlement with the Department of Justice for mortgage origination abuses.
$1 billion. Wow.
And get this. Internal audit findings, which the DOJ later highlighted, confirmed everything. Systemic failures. Inconsistent underwriter oversight. Undefined loan standards. Not enough quality control.
Things the author probably tried to warn them about in that meeting.
Almost certainly. And this is the critical point he makes. These weren't just accidental oversights. These red flags weren't missed, they were intentionally ignored, sacrificed for those rapid growth targets.
So the SunTrust story is really a case study in deliberate risk ignorance at the very top.
Exactly. And the consequences were catastrophic, rippling way beyond just the bank itself.
Okay, so that sets the stage dramatically. But the author then pivots, right? He connects this internal bank failure to something broader happening in the tech world.
Yeah, it's a fascinating connection. He points out that around the same time these bank controls were collapsing, the software industry, which was supposed to help manage risk, was kind of cultivating its own form of systemic risk ignorance.
How so? Through what?
Through the rise of GRC software, governance, risk, and compliance.
Ah, GRC. Okay, I've heard that.
Right, it was a burgeoning industry then. Vendors like Archer were really defining the early days. Their approach was very modular, focused on documenting compliance tasks, audit workflows, that sort of thing.
Okay, sounds useful on the surface.
Yeah.
Documenting things, making sure you're compliant.
Useful, yes, but here's the catch the author highlights. Behind this promise of integration, of bringing everything together.
Who wasn't really integrated?
Often, no. They were fragmented tools, great at organizing documents, creating records, checklists, but they didn't actually enable strategic risk management. They didn't help you truly understand or prioritize risk across the entire business.
So lots of organized information, but not necessarily real insight.
Exactly. And the market eventually started to catch on. It took time, but there was a shift. You could maybe mark it with Gartner's first Magic Quadrant for Integrated Risk Management, IRM, back in 2018.
IRM, Integrated Risk Management. And the author helped define that category.
He did. And the fact that Archer, a major GRC player, showed up as a leader in that first IRM quadrant, well, that was telling.
How so?
It was almost like an admission, right? That GRC, as it had been sold and built, hadn't actually delivered on that core promise of integration.
So the move to IRM wasn't just a new feature set. It was a recognition that something fundamental was missing.
Precisely. Managing risk effectively needed more than just documenting compliance.
And the author finds a real irony here, doesn't he, about how GRC was marketed.
Oh, absolutely. For years, he says, vendors sold features like, tracking regulatory changes or fancy compliance dashboards.
And called it risk intelligence.
They did. Strategic risk intelligence.
Yeah.
But was it really intelligence?
Probably not, based on what you're saying.
The author calls it structured awareness, which is a great term. You're aware of things, you've documented them neatly in boxes, but you don't have the connected insight to make truly informed strategic decisions about risk trade-offs.
So these GRC tools, while maybe helping with compliance audits,
they inadvertently institutionalized a kind of superficial understanding of risk, what the author bluntly calls risk ignorance at the strategic level.
Wow. Okay, so this pivot towards IRM becomes less of an evolution and more of a reckoning for the GRC industry?
That's exactly how the author frames it, a moment of reckoning. Archer moved towards IRM, and then, boom, others followed quickly.
Like who?
Well, you see, ServiceNow repositioning its platform as an integrated system of action. Audit Board, which started more in the audit space, expanded out into full-scale IRM, calling it connected risk.
Okay.
And others, too, Diligent, MetricStream, Logic8, RiskConnect, they all started embracing this IRM architecture.
Yeah.
The focus shifted to unifying data, aligning workflows, embedding risk into actual business decisions.
And the author's point is that this wasn't just GRC version 2.0.
Yeah.
It was a forced correction.
Yes,
Okay.
because the market finally realized GRC wasn't really delivering strategic value. It couldn't.
Why not? What was the fundamental limitation?
It goes back to the architecture, the way these systems were built. GRC platforms were typically designed around static frameworks. Think COSO for internal controls, COBIT for IT governance, ISO 20001 for security.
Standard frameworks, yeah.
Right. Their core design was really about supporting compliance documentation against those frameworks. They weren't built for dynamic integration of different types of risk data from across the business. They weren't built to drive strategic choices.
Which is the promise of IRM.
Exactly. IRM was conceived differently from the start. The goal was explicitly to unify data, align workflows across different departments, and make risk visible and relevant when actual business decisions are being made.
So what can these modern IRM solutions do that GRC couldn't?
They empower the chief risk officer, the CRO, to do much more than just report on compliance status using, simple red, yellow, green traffic lights.
Like what?
Like actually quantifying risk exposure in meaningful business terms, engaging the executive team with scenario analysis. If this risk happens, what's the potential dollar impact? It connects risk to strategy to financial outcomes.
That sounds like a huge leap forward.
It is. And you see this reflected in the real world. Deloitte did a global survey showing that in basically all major financial services firms, the CRO is now deeply involved in driving enterprise strategy. And that model is spreading fast to other industries too.
So it really comes down to the plumbing. The underlying system design dictates whether you're just organizing documents or enabling strategic decisions.
That's the core argument. Architecture dictates capability. Documentation versus genuine strategic insight.
Okay, let's bring this back to SunTrust. After the crash, after the bailout, they obviously needed to fix their risk management.
They certainly tried, and the source mentions that part of their effort involved implementing a new GRC solution, specifically metric stream.
And how did that go, based on everything we've just discussed?
Predictably, it failed.
Failed? Why? Was the software itself bad?
The author argues it wasn't necessarily about that specific software package being inherently flawed. The failure was more fundamental. It failed because the underlying architecture, still rooted in that GRC philosophy of organizing compliance documents, just wasn't sufficient. It couldn't provide the unified, integrated risk intelligence they desperately needed to rebuild trust and make better decisions.
So putting a new GRC system on top of the old problems didn't fix the core issue.
Exactly. You can't solve an integration problem with a tool not designed for integration.
The author then uses a really interesting piece of symbolism, doesn't he? Tied back to that fateful year, 2007.
He does. He points out that in 2007, the same year SunTrust set itself on that reckless growth path.
Yes.
The bank sold its long-held shares in the Coca-Cola company, and doing so returned the iconic secret formula back to Coke.
Huh. Okay, interesting timing.
And for the author, the symbolism was profound. He felt that in relinquishing the Coke formula, SunTrust had also, in a way, lost another crucial formula.
Which was?
The emerging architecture for integrated risk management, the very blueprint he had actually started developing internally at SunTrust before he was effectively pushed out.
Wow. So they didn't just lose Coke's secret formula. They lost the potential formula for fixing their own risk problems.
That's his perspective. And his personal takeaway, walking out of SunTrust with his severance and equity, it wasn't just capital he carried out.
It was an insight.
A profound one. You cannot buy risk intelligence off the shelf like a software package. It absolutely has to be architected, owned, and deeply integrated within the organization itself.
And that insight became foundational for him.
Absolutely. That capital became seed money for his advisory firm, Wheelhouse Advisors. And those insights, learned the hard way at SunTrust, directly informed the IRM models and approaches they developed, like their IRM Navigator model.
So we really come full circle then. The GRC vendors who started it all are now promoting IRM.
Heavily. But the author insists we shouldn't see IRM as just the natural successor to GRC, like the next logical step.
He sees it as a correction.
A necessary correction. Because the core issue wasn't that GRC was missing an integration module or some feature.
The problem was deeper.
The problem was foundational. Integration wasn't a feature GRC lacked. It was a capability its fundamental architecture never possessed, never aimed for.
So IRM isn't just GRC plus.
No. It represents the strategic capability that GRC implicitly promised but structurally couldn't deliver. It ignored the need for true integration.
It's a redefinition then, not just a repackaging.
Absolutely. Think about the difference. Where GRC connected documents.
IRM connects decisions.
Right, where GRC supported compliance checklists.
IRM supports strategic choices, navigating uncertainty.
And where GRC primarily created records of past activities.
IRM aims to create genuine organizational readiness to face future risks, strategically and dynamically.
That's the shift.
So the core takeaway from all this, the message that comes through so clearly is...
risk intelligence isn't a product you acquire. It's not something you just buy and plug in and poof, you're intelligent about risk.
It's something you have to build, architect it, integrate it into the operations, the culture, the very fabric of the organization.
SunTrust learned that lesson in the most painful way possible, costing them billions and nearly their existence.
And the software vendors?
They learned it too, eventually. Forced by the market demanding something more than just documentation, demanding real strategic capability through a unified architecture.
So IRM overcomes GRC's limitations. Not because GRC somehow gracefully evolved into it.
But because GRC's inherent limitations finally forced a surrender to what the market, what businesses actually needed from the very beginning. Genuine strategic integration.
Wow. thinking about that whole journey, from that intense SunTrust boardroom drama all the way to the evolution of an entire software industry. It really is quite a story.
It really is, and it highlights some critical lessons.
Yeah, we've definitely seen the devastating consequences of ignoring risk,
Yeah.
sometimes deliberately.
And how tools marketed as intelligence can actually, paradoxically, institutionalize a form of ignorance if they just focus on documentation instead of real connected insight.
Right. And understanding that fundamental difference, the shift to IRM representing a move from just connecting documents to truly connecting decisions, that's huge.
It requires a completely different kind of system built for that purpose.
So this deep dive, drawing on John Wheeler's experiences and analysis, it makes it incredibly clear, doesn't it? True risk intelligence isn't something you just purchase.
No, it's a capability. You have to architect it, you have to cultivate it, you have to build it right into the DNA of your organization.
Okay, so here's a thought to maybe leave you, our listener, with drawing from where this source material seems to be headed. The whole article series is called The Risk Ignored, right?
Right.
And the next part apparently talks about how the global financial crisis shattered illusions and forced people to connect dots that GRC just never could.
Mm-hmm. Crisis as a catalyst.
Exactly. So the question to ponder is, how often do major failures, major crises, become these really harsh teachers? How often do they brutally reveal fundamental truths about our complex systems? Truths that were maybe conveniently overlooked or papered over or just plain ignored when times seemed easier.
That wraps up another episode of the Risk Wheelhouse. Thank you for spending time with us at Wheelhouse Advisors today. We hope you found the conversation insightful and actionable for your organization's risk strategies. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. If you're looking for more in-depth analysis and thought leadership on risk technology, be sure to visit the Risk Tech Journal at therisktechjournal.com. It's your go-to source for comprehensive articles, expert interviews, and the latest trends shaping the industry. Subscribe today to stay informed. For any inquiries or feedback, please contact us directly at info@wheelhouseadvisors.com, or feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn and x.com and share your thoughts or suggestions for future topics. Visit wheelhouseadvisors.com for more information and resources. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, navigate wisely.